Here on BBC Two now, Landmarks travels back in time to the reign of Charles II.
This is Greenwich in South East London. It's where we live. It's one of the most historic places in the country. Down there used to be Henry VIII's great palace. Henry was born there and so was his daughter Elizabeth.
All trace of Henry's palace has now gone.
That white building in front of us is the Queen's house.
It's a sort of palace in miniature, a place for playing at kings and queens.
This painting shows us what Greenwich looked like in the reign of King Charles II. You can see London in the distance, the River Thames crowded with shipping, and the Queen's house. In 1662, it was the home of Henrietta Maria, the mother of King Charles.
Today we're going to have a look inside the Queen's house and we're going to find out what it was like in Restoration England and perhaps even meet King Charles II.
Well, as we came through the door, it was rather big from what I expected. When I looked up, I didn't expect to see all these great pictures of people playing instruments, and I thought that they looked a bit like angels, and they probably were.
When we got inside the Great Hall, the first thing we noticed was the floor, which was made out of black and white marble in symmetrical patterns in circles and squares, reflecting the shape of the ceiling.
Welcome to the Queen's house. Welcome indeed. Now gather around, for there is much to do today.
This is the Great Hall of the Queen's house.
We met Mistress Anne and Master Michael, and Mistress Anne said that if we were going to meet the King, we would have to learn how to curtsy properly.
If you are fortunate, you may meet with King Charles II, who is to visit.
And when you meet with him, you must certainly learn how to bow to him, or to reverence, as we call it. And for a young lady, you must stand with your feet together, your heels together, but your toes apart. Good. Keep your legs straight for the moment and your hands by your side.
With your left leg, you take one step backwards, a nice, easy step, and you flex the left knee, and you will notice that the trunk of your body sinks upon your back ankle.
Learning to bow was confusing at first because you were putting the wrong feet back, or you were bowing too soon or too early.
Child, do not stick your bottom out. You're not a chicken about to lay an egg. I do not want to see this. And somebody, I believe, looked up at the ceiling. You are not. It is a wondrous ceiling, but do not stare at it. You are to look at the person you are reverencing too. So if it be the King, you will look him in the eyes, and as you bow, you will lower your eyes just in front of you. Shall we try this? Pretend I am the King. So you will look at me, and now, as you bow, lower your eyes, and then up again. It was very well done indeed. And now I think you are ready to learn a dance that is much favoured by the King. But first let us go to the King's own musician. Left. Left again. To the right. 3, 4, and right. Chorus.
I enjoyed the dancing.
Single.
I think they were very nice teachers. The only thing that spoilt it was that at first we weren't wearing costumes. So when you saw the teachers teaching us, when you looked back at everybody else, that sort of ruined it.
And reverence well as we have just instructed you. Oh, that was possible, but not good enough for the king, not nearly good enough.
Now it was time to go and visit the king. We had to go up a big spiral staircase which had iron banisters which were very pretty. On the way up I was feeling very nervous because I didn't know what to expect.
I've never seen the king before, and I don't think I've ever been in the chamber before. The first people went in, and if you were a girl you had to curtsy, and if you were a boy you had to bow, and it made me feel very nervous.
You are welcome to our palace at Greenwich. Please take a seat.
To begin with, we all sat down and nobody spoke because I think everybody was very nervous and they didn't want to embarrass themselves by saying the wrong thing before everybody and didn't want to be first. And the king didn't say anything, so we were sort of sitting there and wondering, what are we supposed to do now?
And the silence was unbearable, really. And then when he started to talk, it went all right.
Perhaps you think I'm an ugly fellow. Indeed, my mother said I was an ugly baby, and maybe I have not changed much. But in truth, I have grown. I am a full foot taller than my late father, whose portrait you see hanging on the wall beside you.
Your Majesty, do you remember your father?
I remember him very well. I remember very well the Battle of Edge Hill. I was 12 years old. I was very fond of my father, and I desperately wanted to fight for him. They dressed me in a suit of magnificent armor. I had a plan. We were to sweep down the hill and rout the enemy. But in the midst of battle, with the bullets flying around, Dr. Harvey dragged me to a safe place. The war continued for 4 terrible years. In the end, my father was defeated. I left England and joined my mother in France, where we tried to find ways to rescue him from his captors. But it was no use. He was guarded too closely. My mother sent letters pleading for his life, but they were never opened. Eventually, in February, news reached us that the worst had happened. My father had been beheaded. England was now governed by men of blood, led by Oliver Cromwell. Cromwell's power depended on the mighty army he had created, which dealt savagely with those who opposed it. Nevertheless, I was determined to recover my rightful throne. In 1652, I led an army down from Scotland. At Worcester, a fierce battle took place. Sadly, my brave soldiers were outnumbered. By evening they were scattered, and I was in danger of being captured.
Could you tell us, Your Majesty, how it was that you escaped after the Battle of Worcester?
What an adventure! I knew every Roundhead in the country would look for me, with a reward of £1,000 placed on my head. So disguise was essential. I cut my hair short, put on a pair of green breeches and a greasy hat, and set forth. I was forced to spend a whole day with a companion hiding in a vast oak tree, while soldiers searched the forest floor below. By night, loyal friends led me from one safe house to another. And while many people recognized me and knew where I was hiding, no one betrayed me. So, after 6 weeks wandering, I was able to make good my escape to France. For the next 8 years, I lived abroad, a guest of foreign princes, a king without a country, a king with nothing but a name. Then, in 1658, Cromwell died, and after much discussion, it was decided that I should be invited back to England and restored to my throne.
Your Majesty, can you tell us about your actual restoration when you got to London?
I shall remember it for as long as I live. I remember, as we rode past the banqueting house, where my late father was murdered, the bells were ringing. There were bonfires in the street. The crowds were all cheering. It was my 30th birthday. I had 20,000 soldiers all marching behind me. And do you know, the most extraordinary thing of all, I was restored by the very army that had rebelled against my father, and not one single drop of blood was spilt.
Did you get a crown, Your Majesty?
Well, there was a problem. The crown jewels had been destroyed by Cromwell. New ones had to be made, at great expense, I may say, £30,000. The orb, symbolising the rule of Christianity over the world. The sceptre, symbolising royal justice. And St. Edward's crown, which was used for the actual crowning. The day before my coronation, I again rode through the streets of London. A magnificent procession from the Tower to Whitehall, just like my father had done, and his father, James I, and Queen Elizabeth, and her father, Henry VIII, and all the other kings and queens of England from the earliest times. The following day, in Westminster Abbey, 12 years after I became king, I was finally crowned king. The abbey was draped in scarlet cloth and looked magnificent. Again, the expense was enormous, but it was important to show the world that the monarchy of England was truly restored. Then a great shout went up from the people. "God save the king," they cried. "God save the king."
And what about your crown jewels? Do you keep them in here?
Oh, no. In this small palace, there are too many rogues and vagabonds to be trusted. No, I have them safely locked up in the Tower of London.
Your Majesty, are you fond of dogs?
I adore them. The palace is full of dogs, and indeed they are spoilt. Each dog has its own special cushion. My courtiers are not so fond of them. They have to walk them in the park, and the mess annoys them. In truth, only yesterday, one fellow was bitten by a dog. He shouted to me, "God bless your Majesty, but God damn your dog."
Your Majesty, what are your hobbies?
Well, I love, like my father and his father, and Henry VIII and his father, tennis. I weigh myself before every game and after. The last game I lost 4 pounds, but gained 10 shillings. I am a great lover of the sea. I love sailing. I plan to build a new yacht. It shall be called the Royal Escape. I enjoy a saunter in St. James's Park, and of course, as the park is open to the public, it does give people a chance to meet me, which, believe it or not, they enjoy.
Your Majesty, do you have many servants to look after you?
I have a great many servants. Why, there's the Royal Coffee Grinder, the Royal Milkman, the Royal Cockle Strewer, the Royal Clockmaker. I love all things mechanical, especially clocks. They are so finely made, constantly moving just like myself. My chambers are full of them. Each one chimes at a different time. It drives my servants quite out of their wits.
Your Majesty, do you have any interest in science?
I believe we should all take an interest in science, in our natural surroundings, don't you? I have founded the Royal Society, which I hope will develop an interest in science in our country. For example, the use of the telescope will enable us to make discoveries about the universe which will be of great benefit to mankind. And when we are able to raise sufficient money, we will build an observatory on Greenwich Hill. Now, I am told you have a dance prepared, which we should much like to see you perform.
The costumes were very beautiful, and I'd love to have kept mine. They were big skirts and puffed sleeves with all these different trimmings on. The boys had to wear these very long curly wigs, which made them look funny because most of them didn't have long hair.
King Charles continued to rule England for more than 20 years. During his reign, many extraordinary events took place. A terrible disease called the plague killed tens of thousands of his subjects. A great fire destroyed much of the city of London. And robbers stole the crown jewels from His Majesty's tower.
I think that when we were in costume, we all behaved differently and we acted more grown up.
It helped us sort of travel back in time.
Well danced, my young friends. We shall come down to join you.
King Charles was charming, brave, energetic, talkative, good-humoured, and a superb dancer. He is sometimes called the Merry Monarch, perhaps because more than any other king or queen of England, he knew how to enjoy himself, and his people loved him for it.
We watched the king dancing and it did feel real because everybody was in the right costumes and sitting in the right positions and everything, and it did feel real. I felt that I really was in Stuart time.
If you'd like an order form for the BBC 2 Land Live.